Good evening, gentlemen. Anyone care to join me at the pub? That was terrible. I'm sorry. If anybody who's British is watching this, please forgive me. That was terrible. Hello all, I'm Joe, and I finally got around to seeing Kingsman: The Secret Service, directed by Matthew Vaughn, starring Taron Egerton, Mark Strong, Michael Caine, Colin Firth, Samuel L. Jackson, and Mark Hamill in a very brief role. Kingsman: The Secret Service tells the story of a young man named Eggsy, played by Taron Egerton, who's drawn into a Secret Service agency called the Kingsman, recruited by Colin Firth, who knew Eggsy's father from several years prior, and Eggsy's father died on a mission, and he had been watching him for so many years and finally had the opportunity to recruit him and training him to become a Kingsman, going up against Samuel L. Jackson, who has certain plans to rule the world, so to speak, but not in the cliche type of way. Now, the first thing I heard about Kingsman was I saw a poster at my local movie theater, and I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. And I saw who the director was, Matthew Vaughn, who did X-Men First Class, and I love that movie. So I thought, oh, this looks interesting. And I looked up the cast, I thought, ooh, some cool names, and of course I got excited for Mark Hamill. More on him later. And seeing the trailers, it looked like a fun spy action adventure type of movie that was a big throwback to those classic spy thrillers like James Bond, and it was getting a lot of great reviews since its release. I also want to apologize to anybody who was waiting for my review. The last couple weeks have been very busy for me, and we've had snowstorms, so I haven't had the time to work it into my schedule, but I finally got around to seeing it just a few hours ago. And I gotta say, I agree with a lot of the reviews. This is really good. The cast, I think, is spot on. Taron Egerton, never heard of this guy before. This is apparently the first big feature that he's been in. This should get him on Hollywood's radar. This kid's going places for sure. He's funny, but he also knows how to balance the dramatic chops very well. Colin Firth kills it in this movie. I'd seen him before in The King's Speech, and I wasn't really sure what to think of him being in an action star type of role, but he is 100% spot on. And he's very funny too. The rest of the cast is very funny also. Michael Caine's in there for a brief amount of time. Why do we fall, Master Wayne? So we could learn to pick ourselves up. I'm always tempted to sound like Michael Caine. I don't know why, whenever I see him. Mark Strong's also really good as the training instructor for the Secret Service, and Samuel L. Jackson as the villain. It's Samuel L. Jackson. What else can you say about him? He's awesome. I had a lisp though, and I thought that's not gonna sound good, but after a while I just went, okay, this is fine. He's really funny, and he's not the typical type of villain. He's very out there. He just has a lot of fun doing what he does. Now let's talk about Mark Hamill real quick, because I know I've said a lot before that I was really excited to see Mark Hamill. He was only in there for a brief amount of time, and I was kind of a bummer that he didn't have a whole lot to do. He's only in it for like 2 scenes or so. That being said, he did his part very well. And I was really excited to see him back in a live-action movie after so many years. And when he first came on screen, I just went, my God, it's Mark Hamill! It's Luke Skywalker! Only a brief amount of time, but it was still nice to see him back. Can't wait to see him in Force Awakens. It's gonna be badass. Now, as far as the rest of the film goes, the story, I think, is done very well. Kind of the typical, stop the bad guy, so to speak. But the movie does a good job at poking fun at itself. And at times, it becomes very unpredictable. You don't know at times exactly where it's going, which I really appreciated. And Matthew Vaughn, who co-wrote the screenplay for this film, did a really good job with this film. Now, I haven't seen all of Matthew Vaughn's films. I haven't seen Kick-Ass. Please don't hate me. But from what I've seen of it, the style in this film is very similar to Kick-Ass, from what I've seen. Matthew Vaughn just looks like he just goes all the way out there and just doesn't care if people find it just too much. There's a lot of fight scenes in here that reminded me of the Cornetto trilogy by Edgar Wright, but also in his own way. Everybody's been talking about this action sequence in a church. My mouth was on the ground. I couldn't believe my own eyes. And the violence in this film, jeez Louise. There's one scene in particular, I have to possibly spoil it for somebody who hasn't seen it. Something goes right through this guy's chin. Oh, God. And the movie's also really funny, too. It's got a really great sense of humor to it. And I gotta say, the British have a really good sense of humor. This, I'll definitely say, is one of Matthew Vaughn's best films. My favorite being X-Men First Class, but this is definitely up there. It's funny, it's got a great cast, very well realized characters. That's pretty much it. Oh, and also, if you guys were wondering, how come I didn't review 50 Shades of Grey? I chose not to see that movie, ever, in order to preserve my sanity. No way am I seeing that. Hell no. And it just bugs me that that movie has more available showtimes at my local theater than this movie did. What is wrong with people sometimes? Anyway, what you guys think of Kingsman? Tell me what your thoughts are down below. Are you going to see it over 50 Shades of Grey? Please do. This is definitely worth your time. And see you next time.